What if I told you that a 36-year-old African president just delivered the most brutal diplomatic takedown in modern history? And it was all broadcast live to 50 million people worldwide? You're about to witness how one man's refusal to stay quiet changed international politics forever. Picture this, it's a quiet Tuesday morning in May 2025. The cameras are rolling. The world is watching. And Ibrahim Traoré, the young president of Burkina Faso, is about to say something that will make the most powerful people in Washington completely lose their minds. Now, before we dive into this incredible story, let me paint you a picture. Ibrahim isn't your typical world leader. At just 36 years old, he's already transformed his country from a struggling nation under terrorist threat into one of Africa's fastest-growing economies. While other politicians talk about change, this guy actually delivers it. And today, he's about to prove that age is just a number when it comes to diplomatic warfare. The BBC had requested this interview months in advance. They wanted to discuss economic development and regional security. Standard stuff, right? What they got instead was a masterclass in how to dismantle a superpower's foreign policy without breaking a sweat. As Ibrahim adjusts his navy blue suit and sits down for what everyone thinks will be a routine interview, thousands of miles away in Washington, President Trump is having his morning briefing. Vice President Vance is reviewing intelligence reports, and their national security team is barely paying attention to what they think is just another African leader doing media rounds. That's their first mistake. Sarah Mitchell, the BBC's senior international correspondent, opens with a seemingly innocent question about Burkina Faso's economic success. She asks whether this growth is sustainable without Western support. Now, most politicians would give a diplomatic answer, maybe thank their international partners, play it safe. But Ibrahim? He leans forward, looks directly into the camera, and says something that makes everyone in the Washington Situation Room sit up straight. That question itself reveals the problem with how the West views Africa. Why do you assume our success depends on Western support? We have been governing ourselves for decades. In Washington, Trump raises an eyebrow. This guy's got some attitude, he mutters. But they have no idea what's coming next. Sarah continues, mentioning partnerships with the United States. And that's when Ibrahim drops the first bomb that will be replayed on news channels for weeks. The United States talks about partnership, but what they really want is subordination. President Trump and Vice President Vance seem to believe that Africa should be grateful for their attention. But frankly, we've learned to succeed without their help. The Situation Room goes dead silent. Trump's face turns red. Vance leans forward in disbelief. Did this young African president just call them out on live television? Oh, but he's just getting started. African nations are not charity cases waiting for American salvation. We are partners in global commerce, contributors to world culture, and leaders in innovation. When President Trump visited Africa, he spent more time talking about what America could extract from our continent than what we could build together. Now, what happens next is pure genius. Instead of making vague accusations, Ibrahim starts dropping specific examples that hit like precision strikes. He mentions the Tamerport expansion project in Ghana, where American companies won contracts despite African firms submitting lower bids. He has exact figures, exact details, exact moments that make the Americans realize this isn't just talk. Vance's face goes pale. How does he know these details? He whispers urgently. But Ibrahim isn't done. He talks about how American companies extract billions from Africa while paying minimal taxes and employing mostly expatriate workers. He mentions that since 2022, Burkina Faso has created 340,000 new jobs, built 28 new factories, and increased agricultural productivity by 67%. All without American help. Here's where it gets really interesting. Ibrahim reveals something that makes the Americans panic. He talks about a recent visit from American businessmen who wanted exclusive rights to Burkina Faso's lithium deposits. Their offer? 2% of the profits and one facility employing 200 people. The same week, China offered 45% of the profits, technology transfer for 3 facilities, and training for 5,000 engineers. Guess which offer they accepted? In Washington, they're frantically trying to figure out how he knows these classified details. But Ibrahim keeps hitting them with numbers that don't lie. American investment in Burkina Faso in 2024? $127 million. Chinese investment? $2.3 billion. Even Turkey invested more than America. Yet President Trump expects us to prioritize American interests, Ibrahim says with a slight smile. But here's where the interview takes a personal turn. Sarah asks about American aid, and Ibrahim's expression hardens for the first time. Let me tell you about American aid to Burkina Faso. We received $23 million last year. But we had to buy American products, hire American consultants, and use American shipping companies. By the time all requirements were met, maybe 8 million actually reached our people. The rest went back to American pockets. Trump is now pacing the Situation Room, calling Ibrahim names that probably can't be repeated on television. But the young president isn't finished delivering his lesson in international relations. President Trump and Vice President Vance have never set foot in a Burkina Faso village. They've never spoken to our farmers, teachers, or doctors. Yet they make policy decisions that affect millions of my people. And then comes the moment that changes everything. Ibrahim looks directly into the camera, and you can feel that he's speaking to someone specific. President Trump, Vice President Vance, if you're watching this, and I know you are, here's my challenge to you. The world holds its breath. I extend a personal invitation to both of you to visit Burkina Faso. Not for a photo opportunity or diplomatic ceremony, but for a real visit. I want you to spend 1 week living as ordinary citizens. No presidential suites, no armed convoys, no scripted meetings. Eat in our local restaurants, shop in our markets, sleep in our middle-class homes, and talk to our people without interpreters or handlers. In Washington, Trump's mouth falls open. Is this guy serious? But Ibrahim isn't done with his challenge. I guarantee that after 1 week in Burkina Faso, President Trump and Vice President Vance will understand why their current approach to Africa is failing. But I doubt they have the courage to accept this challenge. It's easier to make policy from Washington than to experience the reality of the people those policies affect. The audacity is breathtaking. A 36-year-old African president just challenged the most powerful people in America to put their money where their mouth is. And he does it with such calm confidence that you can't help but respect the move. President Trump talks about being a successful businessman, but Burkina Faso's economy has grown faster than any of his businesses ever did. Vice President Vance talks about understanding Middle America, but he has never tried to understand Middle Africa. By now, Twitter is exploding. The hashtag Traoré challenge is trending worldwide. News channels are interrupting regular programming. This isn't just an interview anymore, it's a diplomatic earthquake. But Ibrahim makes his challenge even more interesting. If President Trump and Vice President Vance accept my challenge and spend 1 week in Burkina Faso, I will personally visit Washington for 1 week under whatever conditions they choose. The global audience is captivated. This is diplomacy unlike anything anyone has ever witnessed. A young African leader offering to put himself in an uncomfortable position if the Americans have the courage to do the same. As the interview continues, Ibrahim delivers what becomes the most quoted part of the entire conversation. You know what the real tragedy is? America has so much to offer the world, but their leaders are trapped in an outdated mindset where they must always be the dominant partner. True partnership means recognizing that a 36-year-old African president might have insights that a 78-year-old American president could learn from. The numbers he presents are devastating. American companies lost $4.7 billion in African contracts to Chinese and European competitors, not because their products were inferior, but because their negotiating approach was arrogant and inflexible. He gives specific examples, like General Electric losing a $600 million power plant contract in Nigeria because they demanded exclusive maintenance rights for 25 years. Their competitor won by offering a 10-year partnership with technology transfer. As the interview wraps up, Ibrahim delivers his final message looking directly into the camera. Leadership in the 21st century isn't about dominance. It's about collaboration. It's not about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the most helpful. President Trump, Vice President Vance, the door is always open for respectful dialogue, but dialogue requires two people willing to listen, not just two people waiting to speak. The immediate aftermath is chaos. Within minutes, CNN receives over 50,000 calls and emails. The BBC's website crashes from traffic. The interview is being translated into 23 languages. In Beijing, President Xi reportedly watches the entire thing and calls for an emergency meeting on China-Africa relations. But the most telling reaction comes from across Africa itself, where millions of people feel that finally, someone articulated their frustrations with Western condescension in a way that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. In Washington, the response is exactly what Ibrahim predicted. Trump posts angry tweets calling Ibrahim an ungrateful dictator and threatening to review aid to his failing country. But each tweet only makes the situation worse, proving Ibrahim's point about American arrogance. J.D. Vance tries a more measured response during a CNN interview, but when asked directly about accepting Ibrahim's challenge, he stammers and deflects, creating a viral clip viewed 15 million times in 24 hours. The political damage is severe. Republican senators start distancing themselves from the administration's handling of the crisis. Even Marco Rubio publicly states that America needs to listen more and lecture less in Africa. Meanwhile, Ibrahim's approval rating jumps to 89%, the highest ever recorded for any African leader. 6 countries announce new trade deals within 48 hours. The African Union fast-tracks Burkina Faso's application to host its next summit. But here's what makes this story truly remarkable. In a follow-up interview, Ibrahim says simply, "I didn't speak to embarrass anyone. I spoke to change how we engage with each other as equals in the global community." The challenge remains open. The world is waiting. And in Washington, Trump and Vance face a choice that will define their legacy: respond with dignity and accept the challenge, or continue defensive attacks that only validate Ibrahim's original points. What we witnessed wasn't just a diplomatic interview. It was a generational shift in how the world talks about power, respect, and international relations. A 36-year-old African president showed that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't military might or economic leverage. Sometimes it's simply the courage to tell the truth when everyone else is too afraid to speak up. The young Africans watching this interview didn't just see their continent being defended. They saw what leadership looks like when someone refuses to accept the status quo. They saw what happens when you combine intelligence with courage, facts with conviction, and respect with strength. And no amount of American bluster could put that genie back in the bottle. What do you think? Did Ibrahim go too far, or was it about time someone called out the hypocrisy? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story opened your eyes to something new, smash that like button and subscribe for more content that challenges the narrative. Because sometimes, the most important stories are the ones that make us uncomfortable enough to finally start listening.